It's The Big Show. Alex Belfield talking to my favourite people and the funniest people in the world, and one of them officially is terribly funny, is Mark Watson. How are you?
I'm very well, thanks, but I didn't know I was one of the funniest people in the world. Is that official?
Well, it is, because you've got all this kind of calibre where you've done these international comedy festivals, which in fact was the last time I saw you in Montreal.
True, well, yes. I was on a bill with John Cleese, and then it turned out to be a bill without John Cleese because he was ill.
Can I be honest with you? I've never been so disappointed to see you.
Well, it was a very difficult gig for me, in fact, because yeah, the backdrop to this was Cleese was doing these enormous shows with a sort of bunch of acts like me, junior acts like me supporting him. We did one in Toronto where Cleese was on. He got about 58 standing ovations, and then he fell ill, and so we turned up in Montreal, and suddenly it was, instead of people like Mark Watson, Jimmy Carr and John Cleese, it was all those people but not John Cleese, and everyone had paid about $100 Canadian to see him, and I was first on, so I basically had the unenviable job of walking on and saying, I know you were going to see one of the world's most famous comedians, but here's Bristol's Mark Watson. It was very difficult. Luckily, the audience were incredibly polite and nice, because if they started chanting Cleese, 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 I would have been in difficulties.
Tell me what it's like from your perspective to do one of these comedy festivals. From mine, as a journalist going there, not paying for anything, it was good, but it wasn't amazing. There was good and bad to see, and Montreal ain't the most glamorous place in places, and the hotel you were staying in really is quite rubbish, isn't it?
Yeah, it wasn't a great hotel, and comedy festivals are a strange situation. If you're not careful, you don't see a lot of the town. Some of them are brilliant. The Melbourne Comedy Festival is brilliant, and that's probably the most fun that being a comedian ever gets. Montreal is a strange one because, as you say, there's good and bad, and it's all a bit frantic. You're only ever doing about 5 or 10 minutes at a go. There's a lot of Hollywood types there. It's a bit of a strange experience, really, the Montreal Festival. But having said that, there are plenty of times when you're just there thinking, well, I'm in Canada, I'm being paid, this is fine, my life is fine.
Let me give you my honest opinion of your performance. I think I saw you 5 times in various different shows at various lengths.
That's fairly comprehensive, yeah.
Yeah, I want to be honest with you, because I don't flannel. I thought you were amazing. You came on with great confidence. You didn't muck about. You got straight to it and you got off. A lot of people seem to just turn up and fill at those things and think they're going to get away with it.
Yeah, that was good there. Well, you said, can I be honest? I thought, I'm now going to get slammed.
I wanted to make you a bit nervous.
Yeah, well, you did make me nervous, especially because you said you'd seen me 5 times, so I couldn't very well say, you must have seen a bad night. If every heckle began with someone saying, let me just say I've seen you 5 times, you'd have to take your hat off. Yeah, I think with gigs like that, where you've got sort of 10 minutes and you're on a bill of, top-class comedians, especially if you've got someone like Cleese there, or I was on with Jimmy Carr, Ross Noble, Danny Boy, you do want to... For me, it's important to just get the job done, get those jokes out, and as you say, go. I like to think of it as sort of like 2020 cricket, really. You've got to go out there and play some shots. Whereas some people are content to just sort of, as you say, waffle their way through it. But I'd be too nervous to do that. I really need to get... Well, again, in sporting terms, it's important to get a first touch of the ball, get a first shot in early on. So I try and cram the gags in, yeah. If you're only with an audience for 10 minutes, then you haven't got long to make an impression.
And congratulations not doing what Jimmy Carr did, which was come on with a clipboard. I thought that was a new way of doing comedy, just read jokes.
Yeah, Jimmy Carr, because all his jokes are one-liners, he's allowed to do that. But if I came on with a clipboard, I think... people wouldn't say, this is a clever postmodern touch. They'd say, why the hell doesn't he learn his jokes?
Ken Dodd's 83 and he can remember his. Why can't Jimmy remember?
Well, you better take it up with Jimmy. And Dodd would have a right to be losing his mind the amount of time he spends on stage, but he's still, well, maybe he is, but certainly he seems to remember the gags all right. Yeah, 5 hours worth of them.
Do you know what I love about you as well is your confidence? You seem completely unflustered by it, and especially in a foreign territory where you've got people at one of those festivals from around the world. I mean, it could easily go wrong in interpretation, couldn't it?
It easily can, and I think, in a way, I've got no right, I always feel like I've got no right to be that confident or to seem that confident. In reality, I'm not really, actually. I get pretty nervous in a gig like that. But in a way, being far away from home actually helps, I think. I think if it was in London, a similar show, I'd be very conscious of all the sort of comedy industry people and stuff. In Montreal, the whole situation is so bonkers, really, that I almost find I can't take it seriously. So in a way, it's quite relaxing because you think, this is stupid. I'm in Montreal. I've never been here before. John Cleese is there. Admittedly, he's too ill to go on stage, but he's still here. So in a sense, the bigger and more bizarre the gig, almost, it was the same. I did that O2 show that was on Channel 4 when you got sort of 18,000 people there. And in a way, it's nerve-wracking, but in a way, it was so ridiculous. Like I was on just after Jordan and her boyfriend had just done a spiel, and it gets to a stage where you can't be nervous because you think, I refuse to believe this is my life, you know.
And what do you do? View one person, or do you just see the 18,000 laid out in front of you?
I think it's quite important just to focus on a very small sector of those 18,000. Yeah, so however big the audience, I'll always just focus on not even individuals, but just a row or an area. One of the biggest venues I did on my tour last year was the West Yorkshire Playhouse, in fact, in Leeds, and that's about 800 people. And at the time, that was one of the biggest audiences I'd ever had. So I basically just fixated on these 5 people, girls, unfortunately, so I could have looked quite creepy. But I almost played the whole show to them. Since then, I've got slightly better at looking around.
And in terms of remembering the jokes, is that just instinctive now? Once you start speaking, it comes out, or do you worry about what you're going to say next?
To some extent, it is instinctive now because I've got sort of bits that flow quite naturally and stuff like that. But you never quite know. If you're sort of more of a joke machine like Jimmy Carr, then I think you can pretty much think, I'm going to do number 4, number 12, and so on, and just do them. But for me, even though I might have bits that are quite practiced and polished in theory, I do tend to ramble all over the place in any gig. So I never quite know what I'm going to do, to be honest. I'll sometimes give myself a bit of a pep talk and say, let's try and do this, then do that, then do that. But it never quite works out that way. And the more relaxed I get, the more all over the place the gig gets, in a way. So I sometimes, it's not too nerve-wracking for me because it's me talking. But if you're watching me as my manager or something, you must have times where you think, what is he talking about now? What's he doing?
Your act is a little bit like you come on discombobulated and you don't kind of know whether to go here or there, which is thrilling for an audience because you make it look like it's far more dangerous than it really is.
Well, I think it's either thrilling for an audience or deeply upsetting. I think hopefully people that like me and have seen me before think, oh, here he goes, this will be all right. He might look like he's not in control, but he hopefully has a plan. People that have never seen me before tend to think, oh, that poor man, I hope this is all right. Because it is nerve-wracking to see someone like me who doesn't appear to know what he's talking about. And you don't want the audience to be anxious, so I try and do a few jokes early on to put the audience at their ease. But the longer it goes on, the more apparent it becomes I haven't got a plan.
Are you a sadist to yourself that you look down on the front row and you find the one person in the entire room who isn't laughing and then your entire act is about making them laugh?
Unfortunately, I do that. I think it's very hard for a comedian not to do that. Even if you've got hundreds of people cackling away, you'll nearly always spot the person who isn't laughing. And the thing is, it might be that they're still enjoying themselves. Some people just don't laugh that much. And then they'll come up to you and say, oh, that was great. I just didn't really laugh. I never really laugh. And you sort of do think, you're not my target audience, I think it's fair to say. Please don't come to comedy shows. Yeah, go to ballet.
Have you ever anybody turning up thinking they were saying Russell Watson and then they turn up in you and you didn't sing any opera? Or?
You will not believe this, but this did once happen. Yeah. I because especially there is Russell Howard, of course. So with Mark Watson and Russell Howard, you could almost make... now I'm trying to remember where it was. I think it was in London I did a big venue in London, like the Bloomsbury or something, and there was one night someone swore to me that they'd been next to a person, and when the show started the person started getting fidgety and said I thought it was Russell Watson, and I don't think they were joking either. It sounds implausible, but I grilled this person and they really stuck to it. So I think, even though you asked it as a joke, it has happened, yeah. You think that the fact it was a stand-up show, the poster with me on, there's loads of ways you could have avoided thinking it was Russell Watson, but people don't always put that much research in.
Isn't that the truth, though, that God writes the funniest jokes? I mean, I sit here day in, day out, and I know I'm talking to you now having a laugh, but there's a lot of serious stuff in my programme sometimes, and the inappropriate records that come after it, honestly, if I were to press that next button, it'd be my last day on the radio.
That's right, yeah. No, you can plan as much as you want, but as you say, God tends to have the last laugh in these situations, and especially with a song, it'd be easy not to think about what the lyrics actually are, I suppose, until it's too late.
So you're on the road. How fun is that? I mean, are you sleeping with Lenny Henry every night at the Premier Inn or whatever it's called?
I'm not currently having sex with Lenny Henry, but then what goes on tour stays on tour. Yes, you mean am I
do you get home or do you have to stay in these B&Bs?
Sometimes I get home. For example, if I'm in anywhere, I live in London, anywhere south of about, Sheffield-ish, basically, I'll tend to go back, except that obviously on a tour you get a run of dates sometimes. So Bradford, for example, I'm in Stoke the day after, so it's not worth going home.
Do you find you have to speak more slowly when you end up in a place like Stoke?
You have to speak more loudly because there are so few people bother to come to the show that you have to project to the back of the room. And I say that because my lowest audience last year was in Stafford, and I'm on course for my lowest one this year to be Stoke.
Oh dear.
Stafford's just not my lucky place. So because you do end up going a bit mad on the road if you're not careful, I do try and stay in some quite nice hotels, and I believe, without wishing to spoil anything, that Lenny Henry does as well. I shall be very surprised if he does actually. I know his former tour manager, and without wanting to spill the beans, it's not always travel-ins and travel lodges that Lenny stays in. I'm afraid that's probably true, yeah, because being a comedian isn't the sort of job where you feel you can be that high-minded. But having said that, there are some who will, without wishing to name names. Stephen Kamos, for example, is pretty good. I say without wishing to name names. I've now named his name. Stephen is pretty good at just turning up and saying, I'm not staying here. And certain other comedians are well known for taking one look at the hotel and saying, nope, but I've never had the guts to do that.
Mark, very finally before we go, I'd like to give you a round of applause because you have something that no other comedian has. Which is...
I've got a nice leather jacket, but it can't be that.
Well, no, I'm thinking gastric band. You're the only one I know who isn't fat.
Yeah, I'm certainly a long way away from calling in the old gastric band. I'm probably the most painfully thin comedian on the circuit.
Well, that's what I was wondering. I mean, how do you stay so slim with all the pucker pies at 3 a.m. and things like that?
Well, as you've seen my act, I tend to, in life as in comedy, I tend to pace up and down frantically all the time. I also do a lot of running. I run a lot, and that does tend to take the weight off. But the main thing is just the sort of constant twitching, pacing around, nervous energy that I expend in my life. So it's not the best way to stay slim.
You
but
sound like you need a Mogadon or something.
Yeah, but I might start to put on weight then, and that would never do. My whole thing is being the thinnest comedian. Without the thinnest comedian on the circuit title, where would I go? I'd have nothing.
Mark, it's been really lovely talking to you. Thank you so much for coming on the programme. Let's do some business for you then. Your website with all your tour dates?
Yeah, www.markwatsonthecomedian.com, I believe.
Very nice. Anything else I can do for you? Books, DVDs, slimming videos?
I have got a book out. I've got a novel out. It only just came out. It's called 11. Mm-hmm. And nothing about slimming in there, but quite a lot about identity.
Oh.
And consequence. There you go.
You make yourself sound all serious and proper then.
The novel's quite serious, yeah. I've got my serious side.
An intelligent comedian. I must make a note of the date. What date is it? What time is it?
Well, it's about a radio presenter, the novel, so you might like it.
Oh, really? Okay. Not a deeply unattractive one. Ginger hair, clinically obese. Not based on me or anything?
It's too late to base it on you now.
But, well, maybe the follow-up.
Yeah, quite possibly. He has got an ugly sidekick.
See, we've all got one of those. Lovely to talk to you. Oh dear, that didn't go down very well behind the glass. Mark Watson, thank you so much for coming on. www.markwatson.com, was it?
markwatson.thecomedian.com.
Very nice.
Unfortunately, someone's already got markwatson.com. I think he's a stick insect expert.
He's not a builder or anything. That's embarrassing, isn't it, when you're not top of Google and you're the most important famous person?
It's frustrating. I'm in competition with all other Mark Watsons. Only one can remain standing.
Mark, good to talk to you.
Cheers, mate.